as this is just part of my regular skill set. So the first few things I want to talk about when we discuss what makes an effective public speaker is how you present yourself in terms of what the audience is seeing and hearing. And so the very first component of that is your body language. So when you are public speaking, whether it is on a stage or it's on a webcam just like this, you want to project confidence. The moment that you project confidence, as soon as the audience sees that, they are going to start paying more attention to you. And that's even before you even open your mouth to start speaking. So this is like a really critical component. Now, what is confident body language? Well, one part of that is walking upright with your shoulders back, your head held high. I think you can probably see me on the screen, as opposed to being hunched over like this. Naturally, it can be a little bit scary doing public speaking. So sometimes our first instinct is to make ourselves smaller, where we round our shoulders and hunch in, or we place our hands in front of our waist instead of having them at our sides. But what happens is when people in the audience see this, psychologically, they immediately identify you as being not confident. And they are less likely to be listening carefully to what you say after that. They want to know that you are very confident in the information or the story that you're going to deliver. So, just as a rough tip for that, shoulders back and even, not off kilter, head held high. And another thing, even though you may not be able to see my hands, it's good to have your hands at your side. You can, of course, move them around for gestures as you speak. That's great. But as a starting position, you look more confident when your hands are comfortably at your side. Sometimes we have the instinct to fold our hands in front of ourselves, and that's a protective gesture, which makes us look unconfident, right? And so that's how you want to start by presenting yourself. The next thing is just a nice smile. All right. Just starting off your speech with a smile shows confidence, warmth, and it also makes you look trustworthy. And this is another thing that will immediately attract the audience to listen carefully to you. So that's just the way that we start, right? Now, once we actually start speaking, we want to hold the crowd's attention. And I'm going to actually use an example for this that has nothing to do with speaking, but rather presentations online. So you'll notice right now, I'm not using a PowerPoint, right? Because if I'm using a PowerPoint, you're just going to be staring at the words instead of listening to me carefully. Now, I'm sure you have all been in presentations where someone is presenting to you with a PowerPoint presentation on a screen, and it is just all text. It's a big wall of text with small print. And surely your attention starts to drift away. What you want to see when you're doing a PowerPoint like that is clear, concise information where there is breaks between the different pieces of information and topics. That makes it easier for you to follow along with the writing on the screen. Now, what does that have to do with speaking? Well, when you're speaking, nobody's looking at words on a screen, but what they are listening for are pauses. By using pauses while you're speaking, you give time for what you are saying to sink into everyone's minds, right? So this does not mean pausing very frequently, but we call this effective pauses, okay? So where you are pausing is between your key thoughts. And that is giving the audience time to absorb your information. Okay? So just as an example here, if I was telling you a story, I might say this. Here's an example of a story. I thought I had lost the customer, but something happened which changed the outcome from failure to success. And there is where I would pause. I want my audience to be thinking about, wow, What did he do that changed the outcome from failure to success? Now, if I do not add a pause here, this is what it will sound like. I thought I had lost the customer, but something happened which changed the outcome from failure to success. First, I went over to the customer and I told him that if he came with me, you can see now I've just run into the story without giving the audience time to process this really important hook I've just delivered. I'm trying to hook their attention. But if I just put my sentences together too quickly, the audience is going to start thinking like, oh, the story is kind of boring and long. I'm not giving them time to process the key information. All right. So that's what we need to keep in mind when we're practicing our speeches that we're going to deliver. Next point kind of goes back to the body language topic again. And this is eye contact. So make eye contact whenever possible with your audience. Now, this can seem a little counterintuitive, right? Because when we talk about eye contact, we often think about just speaking with our friend. And we're looking into their eyes as they talk, right? We trust our friend trusts us. We are comfortable together, and so we make eye contact when we're speaking. So when you have an audience and there are 200 people or 1,000 people watching you in a crowd, it may seem like, how can you make eye contact? Well, the thing is, you don't need to be speaking directly to one person in that crowd, but everyone is going to be watching you anyway. So as you scan your eyes over the crowd while you're talking, just try to go from eye contact to eye contact amongst the crowd. So you can just make eye contact for a second or two and then just kind of easily switch over to another person. And the effect here is that as the audience is watching you, they see that you are very comfortably making quick eye contact with different people in the crowd. That really holds their attention because they can feel like, wow, he or she might make eye contact with me. So it creates kind of a sense of comfort and it makes them more attentive because they feel that you are honestly and confidently relating your information directly to them. Now, to kind of demonstrate why this is effective, if you don't make eye contact with the crowd and you keep your eyes down, or your eyes are constantly on the ceiling, what will happen with that, of course, is that the audience feels like you aren't really talking directly to them. It sounds more like you're just giving a memorized speech. You may notice, now I can't see most of you because I think everyone has their webcams off, but you'll notice that even as I'm talking to you, it probably looks like I'm making eye contact with you. And that's because even when we are speaking online, which is very prevalent in our COVID-19 pandemic era, I'm looking directly into my webcam, right? So here's the difference. Rather than me looking at myself on my own screen here on Google Meets, I'm looking right into my webcam. And this gives, was that just recently? That was just a moment ago? Okay. All right. So as I was saying, right now, I'm making eye contact with all of you right through the camera, even though I cannot actually see you. And hopefully, it's giving you the impression that I'm looking at you, and that's helping to hold your attention. So we are all doing online meetings all the time these days, and this is where this becomes very, very handy. Because if you want to deliver an effective presentation online, it really helps to look directly into your camera and your audience will feel that you are looking right at them. So please consider this, whether you are delivering a presentation to your classroom, right? Whether you are delivering it as a seminar on stage, or whether you are simply on an online meeting. You want to be forming eye contact with people. Okay, and one other component is good diction. So let's just say instead of diction, we'll say vocabulary. You want to make good vocabulary choices. Of course, before you give a speech, you will probably prepare it, you'll write it in advance and practice it. So just think about, are you using the most effective words that you can? Are you using a variety of words so that you're not being repetitive and repeating the same terms, the same idioms again and again, right? You want to make sure that you have effective, dynamic, varied language. All of this really helps the audience pay attention more, and they're going to get more out of your speech. The more they pay attention, the more effective your speech is, because they are more likely to absorb all that information you're giving them. All right, so that is a key thing to remember there. Now, I kind of want to move on to an aspect of storytelling, because I'm really big into storytelling. When you're delivering a speech, there are some topics where you cannot turn that into a story. I'm not sure why. My microphone keeps automatically muting, but I'll try to keep an eye on that. I just see it mute right out of in the corner of my eye. Yeah, everyone, please tell me if you hear me go mute again. Okay. Anyway, as far as storytelling goes, often when you're delivering a speech about a topic, whether it is your class for your high school or another age group, whether that is a seminar, interestingly, you can very often turn your speech into a kind of story. Now, this doesn't mean the whole entire speech has to have an exciting story with a beginning and a conclusion and an end, but it's a great way to hook your audience in and get their attention. So when possible, when you start a topic, if you can start with a short story, you will absolutely hook people's attention. Of course, you want that story to be related to your topic. But if you can do that, you're going to really be able to grab people's attention. Now they're interested. And why is that? Well, it muted again. As I'm sure you know, humans are really storytelling creatures, right? We are storytelling creatures. Humans have evolved to listen to stories. The more of a kind of narrative that you can add into your public speech, even if it's just throwing in a small story here or there, it will make a big difference in those listening to you. They're going to be really excited to listen. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, oh, by the way, before I move on, does anybody have a question before I get into some preparation activities that you can do for public speaking? Does anyone have a question? Feel free to unmute and ask me if you do. Okay, everyone's listening patiently. Okay, I'll continue then. All right, so I'm just going to add in some things here about what you can do to practice, okay, when you're at home. So the first thing is practicing varying your vocal pitch, speed, and emphasis. Now, I understand that part of this is going to depend on what language you're speaking. Of course, I'm thinking in an English way for this. So when I talk about varying your vocal pitch, that simply means do not speak as a monologue. Now, that means you have one tone throughout your speech. Now, some languages are naturally more monotone than others. English, of course, is quite flexible. We can put our voices up and down. You probably notice as I'm speaking to you, my pitch is going up and down quite a lot. If you can exaggerate your speech a little bit and make sure to have variance in your pitches, it keeps your audience's minds from falling asleep. So when we hear just a flat monotone with no variation, ups and downs in the pitches, our minds start to go to sleep because it becomes a drone. It becomes boring. So feel free to have an animated voice with rises and falls in your pitch. So if you are giving some exciting data or information, if you're telling a story, you want to have these variances in your pitch to show your excitement, to show something shocking, to show a surprising element of what you're saying. If you're giving a piece of data which is very impressive, right? You want to emphasize that in your voice. And that will keep the audience also feeling that what you're presenting is impressive or surprising or shocking. You want to have all of that in there. You also want to vary your speeds. So when you're imparting a very important piece of information, naturally you want to slow down a bit, right? You can talk quickly through aspects that the audience is familiar with, but when you really want to import that important information, you want to naturally slow down a bit if possible, right? So just something to keep in mind. I think we all naturally do this, right? Whether you talk to your friends or your family, when you've got important information, you slow down a bit. The thing is, though, when you are public speaking, we have to think about our nerves. We often get really nervous when we are in public speaking situations, especially when there are 20, 30, 40, 200, 1,000 people watching us. And what happens when we are nervous is we usually start to speak faster. This is natural for just about everyone. We start speaking faster and faster because we are scared that people are going to be bored, right? We're nervous about all kinds of things. And so we just want to be conscious of that. And so when you're practicing a public speech or even a lesson, a lecture that you might be delivering, as you're practicing that, you want to highlight the parts that you are going to speak a little bit slower on, just to keep those in mind, so that even if you're getting nervous and forgetting your speed, when you get to those parts, you'll remember, yes, I need to slow down and emphasize this point, because I want my students, I want my audience to really grasp this concept, and I want them to hear that. So that's pitch and speed. Another thing you can practice is your breathing. Okay, so we all know if any of you meditate, for example, you're very used to taking deep breaths, slowing your breathing in order to relax yourself. Well, this is key for public speaking too. As most of you probably know, by slowing your breathing, you relax yourself, right? You slow your heart down, and that is going to help you project more confidence. So if you're waiting to walk out on a stage or to stand up at a conference at a microphone, slow your breathing with some nice, nice big breaths that will slow your heart down. It will remove some of your stress, and it will remove the physical signs in your body of being stressed or nervous. And just like we talked about in the beginning about the importance of posture, straight shoulders, head up, this ties back into that. People can see when someone is nervous. Yes, they can't see your heart beating, but they can see in your posture, your facial features, if you're really scared, right? So deep breathing to relax yourself exudes confidence to your audience. And of course, as I mentioned, that will make them immediately start to listen more carefully to you. Oh, just went mute again. Now, the other benefit of practicing your breathing is that through breath, sorry, everybody, I'm not sure why my mic keeps muting. So the other benefit of practicing your breathing is for projection purposes. Now, I just used the word projection. I'm not sure if everyone here knows what I'm referring to when I say that. But when we talk about speaking, projection is how you are projecting your voice out to fill the space that you're in. So if you're in a classroom, naturally you speak at a certain volume to project your voice to the back of the classroom so that the people who are furthest away can hear you. If you're in a big auditorium, you're going to need to project a lot more. And even if you have a microphone, projection still comes into it. Yes, the microphone will electronically help you project your voice, but you also want to have a resonant, confident voice when you're doing that. Right now, I'm speaking to you all through a webcam, right? Now, technically, I could lean in like this, and I could speak in a very low voice, and you'd still be able to hear me. But what you actually see is me sitting up straight, and I'm speaking actually in a louder than necessary voice. But you can hear that that is adding some confidence and resonance to my voice, right? Which hopefully is attracting you to pay attention. And that's what you want to do as well, whether you have a microphone or not. Okay, so projection of your voice, it's going to be better when you are relaxed, breathing deep breaths, breathing slowly, right? And you'll appear more confident. Okay, so I'll just take you very quickly then through a small exercise that you can do before you start speaking. So you just stand or sit up straight, right? Shoulders back. You breathe in through your nose for 3 seconds and out through your nose for 4 to 6 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, and then out through your nose slowly for 4 to 6 seconds. Okay, and you do that a few times, and that is going to just start relaxing your body. Another thing you can do that's not quite related to breathing is to hum as you exhale. So as you're breathing out, hum. It might seem kind of silly, but what that is doing is it's warming up your throat. It's warming up your vocal cords. That way, when you begin to speak, it won't sound like you have just been quiet for 3 hours and then suddenly talking, right? Sometimes your voice quality will not be as good as it is unless your vocal cords are warmed up. So adding a hum as you're breathing is going to help just warm up your throat for that. And it will make a difference in the quality of your voice. Okay, and another thing to practice, because earlier we talked about the importance of varying your speed, right? We want to go up and down in pitch. We want to slow down on important points. Okay, and so let's also talk about practicing speaking fast. So there's a reason to try practicing that. When you're speaking very fast, you're forcing your lips to move, right? And your tongue to move. Your mouth is going to be pronouncing words very, very quickly, right? Almost like listening to a rap or hip hop. If you can do that, it's great because when you slow down, you're more likely to be enunciating all your words correctly because you've given your lips and tongue a bit of a workout from speaking very fast. So a way to practice this before doing a big speech is simply to pick a passage from a book or a magazine, a newspaper article, and record yourself reading it very, very fast. Right? Read it as fast as you can. And then go back and listen and just listen. Wow, can I understand myself? Did I read that clearly, even though I was reading it fast? And if you can, that's great. Then go back again and record yourself reading the same passage slowly, and then give that a listen, right? Of course, this time, everything's going to be very, very clear. But what you've done by reading it very quickly first is you've given that exercise to your lips and tongues. To your lips and tongue. So they're going to be able to shape themselves around all the words you need to do, even when you're up there on a stage or in front of your classroom and delivering this speech into front of all kinds of people, right? And your mind is kind of nervous and you're thinking about all the people in the audience. You know, by giving your mouth some practice, you're less likely to trip up over your words and be mispronouncing things. So that's just a little warm-up bit. A couple other things you can do just to overcome your nervous feelings. If possible, try to scout out the venue. So, of course, if we're talking about public speaking for your classroom, like delivering a lecture, you're very aware of the dimensions of your classroom. You're used to that space. If, however, you are invited to a conference or a seminar or to deliver a lecture in a big lecture hall. If possible, it really helps if you can visit that space and scout it out. Just take a look. How high are the ceilings? What is the shape of this room? And all that will do is just make you feel more familiar in your surroundings, right? Comfortable, just like you're in your regular classroom or in your home. You'll feel more comfortable if you are not seeing the venue where you will deliver your speech for the first time, that moment that you're delivering it. Because what's going to happen if you walk into that venue and you've never been in that room before, your mind is going to be curious and you'll be looking everywhere because it's a new environment. It's a little bit strange. So if you have time to go ahead of time and just check out the lecture hall, the conference hall, the space, once you actually stand up in front of everybody to give your speech, it's just going to make you feel more at home. You'll look more at ease. Sorry, I just saw that there was a comment that came in there. Maybe I can open that up. Oh, sorry. I just see a question here, so I'll just answer that. Someone asked, that might make my presentation look more professional, or should I only focus on making the audience easier to understand? Thanks for responding. Okay, you want both for sure. You want your audience to clearly understand what you are saying, but the reason you want it to look professional is actually connected with this. This is a great question. If your presentation looks more professional, and I think what you mean is more confident, right? You're delivering it confidently. They're actually going to be more likely to understand what you're saying because from a psychological aspect, their minds are going to be tuning in more carefully to what you are saying when you look confident and professional. So even though you may speak very clearly and you have all the key information there, they're still likely to understand better when you are delivering it confidently, simply because their minds are more prepared to trust and listen to what you're saying. So when you look confident and professional, people will trust, oh yeah, this guy, this man, or this woman is definitely an expert in this. They know exactly what they're talking about. I should listen to them and receive this knowledge. That's what the back of their minds of your audience will start to think. And that's why it's important to have that mix. You want to have professional and confidence and also, be eloquent and well prepared to deliver your information. Great question. Actually, this leads me into my next section. Someone in attendance asked, when you are giving a speech and you're so nervous that you feel uncomfortable, what would you do next? Okay. So one thing is that breathing exercise, right? Just to touch on that again. Deep breath in through the nose for 3 seconds. Out for 4 to 6 seconds. Okay, and you can add a hum into that too to warm up your voice. Now, it may seem when you're feeling very nervous that you feel like you can't breathe slowly, right? Your heart is pounding. I know exactly what that feels like. I've been on stage many, many times in front of big audiences. And I'll tell you the truth, no matter how experienced someone is with public speaking, everyone feels nervous in the moment before they start. Okay, no matter how confident someone looks, everyone feels a little bit nervous. But the reason that is good is it's because you care about what you are telling people. You care about what people think, right? You're not arrogant about yourself. And that's a really important thing to remember. It's not a bad thing to feel nervous, but we do want to counteract that as well as possible, right? So those slow breaths can help. Scouting out the venue, meaning just look at where you're going to be speaking, get familiar with it. Another thing you can do is try to burn off some stress before you start. Okay, when you're feeling nervous, that's the hormone adrenaline rushing through your body, right? And it gives you a fight or flight sensation, meaning I have to fight or I have to run away, right? This is normal for all creatures, right? And that's what's going through your body when you start to feel stressed. But if you have too much of it, you'll start to get shaky. right? Your body will start to shake. And then you start to feel nervous that other people can see you're nervous, and that makes you even more nervous, right? So one way to counteract this is if you have time, do some light exercise before you have to give your speech. So let's say, for example, you are traveling for a conference and you're staying in a hotel room before you go to a lecture. Maybe 2 hours before, an hour or two before, do some light exercise, maybe a short jog, some jumping jacks, some push-ups. What that's doing is it's burning away some of your negative energy, and that's going to reduce the adrenaline you'll feel later when you start to get nervous. All right, so you just want to burn off some of that energy. So if you have time in advance, just find a quiet place or a private place and do some light exercise. And that will help reduce that kind of negative feeling energy you feel later. Okay, another thing in here. We saw there's kind of a funny comment in the chat. Someone said, just imagine all the audience are potatoes. Yep, that's one way. Another thing that we often say, at least in my country, is we say, picture the whole audience in their underwear, because then they will just look silly in your imagination and you won't feel like they're judging you so much. So that's another thing that we say, but I guess each culture has its own way of thinking about that. So I see a couple comments here. How can you stop yourself shivering when it just gets more serious? Okay, yeah, that's what I was just mentioning. When you start to feel nervous and then you get nervous that everyone can see you're nervous, and then you feel more nervous, right? And I think that's what you mean. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Try those breathing exercises. It seems like breathing is so simple, right? But the thing is, when you take those deep breaths and breathe slower, it actually makes your heart rate slow down. And when your heart rate slows down, your body gets the message that you are relaxed. And then your shivering will start to go away, because your adrenaline is going to start reducing. And what's causing you to shake is adrenaline, that hormone in your body. And that's the nervousness hormone, right? It will start to go away as you physically relax yourself. But I know exactly what you mean. Of course, I've been there. I've had those feelings. Maybe it feels like your stomach has butterflies in it. There's another similar question here. Sorry for interrupting. I get nervous when I'm delivering a speech and I'll start stammering. Okay, so stammering is an interesting one, right? You're worried that you're not going to be able to speak eloquently. So I did mention that tip about practicing speaking very fast and then speaking very slow, right? So you can read a piece of a book, for example, just to practice, read it as fast as you can, and then try reading it slower. And what that will do is it's just going to get your mouth practicing all those different sounds, and it's going to make you more confident when you're speaking your speech, because you can feel, I've had all this practice. I can pronounce all these words just fine. Like, I can speak very, very well. And if you come out with that confidence, your stammering is going to start to go away, right? The stammering is coming from you not being confident that people are listening to you, or you're not confident that you've chosen the right words, right? So carefully constructing your speech can help with that. And also, knowing that it's okay to slow down in your speech will also help with the stammering. So when we get nervous, as I mentioned, we start to speak super fast, right? And when you speak faster and faster, you're more likely to start stammering, because your mouth is then telling your body that you're nervous. So it's okay to slow down. And probably even what you feel is speaking too slowly, quote unquote, too slowly, to the audience, that probably sounds like a normal speed, right? So you may feel, oh, now I'm speaking too slowly. But for the audience, that probably sounds like a fine speed, right? So don't worry about slowing yourself down to overcome stammering, because you're much less likely to stammer when you're speaking more slowly, right? And it will also give you time to think ahead to what you're going to say next, or read your notes if you have some cue cards. Okay, some more interesting questions here. So someone wrote, my friend told me to imagine all the audience is naked, but I just get more nervous. Okay, in that case, don't imagine the audience is naked then. You know, when we talk about imagine the audience are potatoes, imagine the audience is naked, imagine they're in their underwear. What we really mean when we give this kind of example is we want to feel like the audience is not judging us, right? We don't want to feel like the audience is looking down at us and judging. And so something I would just like to say to all of you who feel nervous when public speaking, consider yourself when you are watching a presentation. If you honestly think about your own perspectives, when you watch a presentation, are you judging that speaker? Does it bother you if they mispronounce a word, right? Maybe, or if they stammer a little bit? If you don't judge a speaker for that, you can be quite sure that no one in the audience will be judging you when you speak either. So often we make the mistake of thinking that everybody is judging me, right? They're listening to my every word. They don't like me, right? But if you don't feel like that when you are watching someone speak, then it's likely nobody thinks like that when they're listening to you. Actually, they're just there to learn something, to get some information. So if you think about the important thing being that you convey your information and that you can at least hold their attention just through some body language, looking relaxed, then you're much less likely to be worrying about being nervous, because the fear is really coming from the fear of being judged. But it is not likely that anyone there is truly judging you. So, and even if people are, let's say you have a supervisor or the superintendent from your school or the principal, even if someone there might be evaluating you, for example, just put that out of your mind, right, as best you can, right? That's just something you'll have to try to put out of your mind if someone is really there judging you. But very likely, it is just an audience of normal people that have come to the conference. It's your turn to stand up. They're going to politely be listening to you, right? And don't worry about them looking down at you if possible. Good question. So you're thinking you're reading and you forget what you were talking about, right? You forget what was the next thing I was going to say. Oh my. Here's what will help you feel a little bit more confident. Your audience has no idea what you were going to say next, right? Only you know what your plan was. So if you forget what was supposed to come next, jump ahead to the next part of the speech that you can remember. And if possible, just try to segue or bridge into it using just one sentence maybe. Just try to bridge into that next part from what you were just saying. The thing is, the audience probably won't know because they don't know what your speech is. Only you do. And I can give you an example of this because I mentioned earlier, I'm classically trained in theater. So I've been in Shakespeare plays, all kinds of plays on a stage in front of hundreds of people. And in every play, someone is going to forget their lines. But the thing is, the audience does not know what the actors are going to say, right? They're not experts in the play. So if I simply jump ahead 3 or 4 lines, the audience doesn't know in the end, right? They're still enjoying the show. And you can think about that even when you're doing your public speaking. If you forget your content, think ahead to the next part that you can remember. And if you remember that there was some critical information you missed, simply go back to it after you have finished the next key point. The only thing you don't want to do is interrupt a key point to insert irrelevant information. So when you're planning your speech, maybe highlight all the key points in it. right? Make sure to pause after each of those key points. And now you have some different stones basically to jump across. Imagine you're on a river and you're jumping across some stones of meaning, right? And you forget what comes next, so you just jump ahead to the next key point, right? Yes, maybe the audience will miss some information, but they won't know they missed it, right? And that's the difference. They don't know what you were going to say. So you can feel confident in jumping ahead. And if you'd like, if you remember that information you missed, just go back later and say, oh, by the way, everyone, I should also add that this, and then just give that point afterwards. Really, no one will know that you made a mistake. So much. Bye, everybody. Nice to see you all.